This is Social Skills and Interactions from Browder and Spooner, Part 2. Okay, so in the last section we talked about what's what, okay, with social skills and why we need to teach them, and a little bit about what's in the chapter. Do not use these PowerPoint lectures just as a replacement for the chapter, as you would not in any class. But what we're talking about right now are some strategies for addressing social needs. Okay, so some strategies for addressing some different type of social needs that they need. Individuals with severe special needs, just like all of us, they need to have a shared space. They need to be able to know that they are a part of what is going on. And even if they don't always act as if they want to be a part of that shared space, this really needs to be a part of their education. They also need to have some shared activities. This is especially important for those kids who have difficulties with coming out of their shell, such as kids with autism. We don't want to isolate them. I know that might be what they might seem to prefer at times, but really they just don't know how to come out of their own little space. So we have to help them. So we need to find out what their interests are and find someone in the classroom who shares those interests. We also need to look at giving them social and communication skills instruction. It doesn't necessarily come easily to students with these kinds of issues. And so it's really important that we look at how do we go about doing that. And we want to provide really good strategies to their peers. Because, a lot of times their peers really want to know who they are and understand them, but they may not know how to go about interacting with them. And that might be frightening for especially small children. They're curious, but they're still not quite ready to figure this out without a little bit of help from their teachers. And we also need to develop roles for each student in our classroom. That includes those students with special needs, especially severe needs. We should always realize that all of our kids have something unique to give to the classroom. And so we need to find what that is and to help them be able to do that. Now, we also need to remember we don't handicap them by doing everything for them. We need to let them learn how to do things for themselves. Okay, so by doing this, we're going to use what we call evidence-based strategies. That means that there's enough research behind it, the strategy that you're using, that we can honestly say if somebody comes in to ask us, is this a research-based or an evidence-based strategy? And the answer to that needs to be yes. That means you need to go to the What Works website, look up things online. This is why you do these article reviews. I want you learning how to look up articles and understand what's actually in them. So some very useful evidence-based strategies, and this is in all of the research that you're going to find. Inclusive general education classrooms, when appropriate. Remember, it's not appropriate for everyone. If they're not flourishing in that inclusion classroom, then maybe we need to pull them out and give them a little bit of a smaller classroom a resource, or even self-contained if that's what they need. We also need to have them interacting with students in informal context. This will really help them to transition into the inclusion classroom. Having them in the lunchroom when, the cafeteria when they're actually eating lunch. It's going to help them to understand that this is what all students do. Giving them recess at the same time as their peers. Having them move through the hallways at the same time with their peers as much as possible. And giving them access before and after school to their same age peers. This also includes those extracurricular and different kinds of school activities like band. What the athletic activities that they are interested in and that will not hurt them. We always have to remember that many of the activities that our non-disabled same-age peers do, we have to make sure that our kids with special needs don't get hurt, okay? So, some of different types of extracurricular activities that they might be interested in. Sometimes, we have them in band or choir, or have them doing other things around the school before and after school. And this can really help them to get to know other students. And of course, during after school, okay? Now, after school on the weekends, that's a little bit easier, but those summer months, that's where we might want to make sure that we've at least talked to the parents about Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, different types of activities in the community. A lot of times parents, they have their kids doing church activities, and then you have some parents who really are not into church activities themselves, but they allow their children to because they know they're going to be able to be around other kids for those activities. And so, for whatever reason, we need to make sure that our students have access to other students. So, peer support strategies. We're going to want to make sure that our students have different steps for identifying peers that they can work with. So we're going to want to identify students who need assistance to participate in classroom activities, and then orient the peers that are willing to help and teach them how to do this. So you're going to have to do some training, some peer training. And then you're going to provide the students and the peers opportunities where they can work together. You always want to be able to monitor these situations because you want to make sure that everybody is benefiting. And one way to do this is to have cooperative learning activities. So you want to divide the class into small groups, 4 or 5 students, not larger than that. I know sometimes that happens in classes. You have a lot of students, and so you want to have only 4 groups. However, if your groups are too large, then you're going to have difficulties being able to manage them. So one of the things that you might do is, and this is suggested by Wong and Wong, is to make sure that everybody in the group has a job. Okay, so there's different jobs in most groups. There's the person who gets materials. There's the person who takes notes. So you got your note taker. You've also got your, and they're sometimes called the recorder. You've got your sergeant at arms, okay? That's the person who makes sure that everything gets done. You might have an artist. You might have a group facilitator. So somebody in the group that is going to be good at making sure that Not just that the work gets done, but they kind of lead the activities. So you don't want to have more than 4 or 5 people because then you don't have enough time for everybody to do their job. You also want to make sure that there are common learning goals. Anytime you do cooperative learning, you always have to have a learning goal for that activity. That's very intrinsic to, especially for those of you that are taking differentiation. We're going to be talking about that pretty quickly in that class as well. So you're going to be specifying roles for each student so that they can all know exactly what they're supposed to be doing and how they will be working together. Now, your part, your facilitation part, is to model how we interact with one another. So you might want to do some role play with 2 or 3 other teachers and have them come in and show the students how we do a group if they're having difficulties figuring this out. We also want to highlight what are common interests in the classroom, strengths and experiences, which means we're going to have kids talking about what things that they've done and what they're interested in. Also, when we see the students' interactions are not quite what we're hoping for, we're going to have to be the ones who redirect those interactions. And sometimes we have students who have difficulties with managing communications. And so sometimes we have to help to reinterpret what it is, especially students who have very severe articulation issues. And I just realized I have a misspelled word here, and it's driving me crazy. So I'm sorry, I have to fix it. Okay, now I'm happy. Okay, so we also need to make sure that we are arranging classroom responsibilities in a way that is going to facilitate interaction. Okay, so we don't want to have so many things in the classroom that our students get totally distracted from what they're supposed to be doing. So you might want to look at how your seating is arranged. So have everybody in 4s and 5s. So even though students may have to rotate to different groups, all your chairs are in 4s and 5s, or you have tables in the classroom. And that can really help to facilitate interactions, especially when you want to have a cooperative learning classroom.